The pickup of the op here. Show me something. 1v1 situation here, Tucson. Born and raised in the north. Sniper. Wielded. Just like when he was hunting deer with his father as a small child. Doesn't want to miss the bullet before his enemy flees. As the time ticks, so does his heart as he's gonna go for the quick scope take. I should have carried it into like an Anders.
Is this real? How is this real?
So is that the intro clip for you?
That's the intro clip right there, bro. Detailing his first ever encounter with Shroud to the origins behind the flashbang dance, this week's Unmuted Live features North American Counter-Strike legend Jordan n0thing Gilbert. You aren't going to want to miss his takes on Counter-Strike 2, shooters of today versus 1.6, or how copying Valorant's matchmaking system could allow Valve to save NACS. So let's get into it.
My chat has a question for you already, but
What's that?
why do you love Inferno?
Man. I feel like it's safe to say there's a significant portion of our audience who knows who you are, not just because you've been on this show before when it was a recorded show, but in case there's anyone who's like sort of not really familiar with who you are, could you care to elaborate?
So Jordan n0thing Gilbert here. I've been playing Counter-Strike since basically, I think beta 5.2, probably the year 2000. Went pro at about age 17. I was playing pro leagues at 15, but I couldn't compete in a lot of the tournaments because of the age regulations, so teams wouldn't pick me up. Went pro 1.6 for Evil Geniuses, was part of basically the #1 North American team from 1.6 in 2008 all the way through when I stopped playing in 2018. And since then, I've just chose to, I have a kid and I have a second child on the way, my beautiful wife and beautiful son I spend time with, and I stream and I had my own business here for consulting and stuff and still gaming, but I stopped competing basically to control my schedule and life a little bit more, and I still love the games though, and that's where we're at now.
Someone asked in my chat actually about it, Jordan. I was gonna ask you, what is the story, my dude, of the Verkars and how that collab came to be?
Oh yeah, dude, they just DM'd me, I think, on Insta, and we're like, yo, dog, we made easy friends, and I was like, oh, yeah. They're like, all right, so they obviously make songs, so they're like, this is how we could start. Like, you can come up with some verses. And I remember I used to make this joke all the time where I'd talk about running up long A. So I was like, we're definitely gonna start the verse that way.
Running up long A with an AK. Doesn't really matter what way you wanna play.
You know, if I was rapping, I would be a little bit more like 90s hip hop, and they're like, all right, we gotta have it like lighthearted. So like we'll help you with the chorus. So I was like, ballin', like Aben.
Feeling bit faded, and even if I go blind, I can still see all my haters.
And I was like, that's not something I would come up with. So that was definitely something they came up with.
I was gonna ask you, so your world famous nuke wallbang, which I rewatched before
yeah.
this review, you're sort of colloquially understood to be your region's, first great Counter-Strike prodigy.
Yo.
Was it sort of weird being like that cracked at such a young age?
I think one of my strong suits was also like a double-edged sword for me, which was that I was a pretty happy-go-lucky kid. I kind of talked about this. I feel like what stopped me from really like being as much of a star player as I could have, even though I was probably the best player in the region for a while. I kind of was just worried about the team and everything, kind of happy-go-lucky, and I'd have these performances where I would drop 30, 40 kills, whatever, and have epic performances, and then I'd kind of play average, and I wouldn't like really take over like I should always, and I knew I had the skill to, and I think like one thing I could have recognized sooner with like that real competitor's like mentality of like going into war mode and really getting the Kobe Bryant kind of that level of focus you see him and Michael Jordan talk about. Like, maybe I don't want to slap my teammates, but I want to like, I just felt like that was something for me. Like, I didn't realize when I was younger, and that was the problem, honestly, with NA, is like, without sounding arrogant, since you said it, I did feel like it was so easy for me to be good at mechanically, and like, I had good comms and I had a good attitude, or just to kind of pat myself on the back. But yeah, the only thing I really lacked maybe sometimes was a little bit of a killer instinct, just because I was kind of just a happy kid.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, it's pretty rare to have, a North American player who's that young coming up who's a 1.6er, right? The vast majority of NA players are sorcerers. I'm curious, like, do you think that the fact that you played 1.6 and were one of the few sort of like young, kiddies, if you will, who played 1.6, like that was a factor?
No, I mean, it definitely helped. I mean, I still talk about it to this day, like when you look at every shooter and people, like the other day I said something about Apex casually, like how there just doesn't take any like skill with the weapons basically, and a bunch of Apex kids lit me up. And I was like, okay, I guess we're at a misunderstanding. I just mean like I don't have to try that hard. Like, whereas like, and like that was the thing with 1.6, like even going back and playing it now and not having played it for a while, it's like, there's a there's a delicate balance in using the AK that was not for the faint of heart. And I think, like you said, like I didn't play Source, but I had the best Source team in the world trying to recruit me, if that says anything.
How did you first meet Shroud? How did you meet him? Like, what's the story there? And how early on did you did you realize like this guy's actually like insane?
The first time I met him is actually in person. He was spectating me eating Taco Bell behind me at LAN. He was just kind of watching me play. I kind of met him, and everyone's kind of saying he's nuts. And I forget how it happened, but we scrimmed with him, and I got to watch him. At the time, we just needed like another just fucking banger. Like we had the strat car, we had the oppers, we had the support players. We didn't have someone who was just gonna like laser people, and we're like, oh, this kid might be that. We kind of jumped right into it and went to a boot camp before ESL Cologne and started to get to see, okay, this kid's pretty nice. But like it was still like Kiko was like the star clutcher. So Shroud was really just like, we just needed to like find people for him to shoot. It's funny, Shroudy likes to always remind me the first time we went to a LAN, because I was kind of like the tenured guy on the team with Hiko and Sean, but they're like, listen, like, just stay with Jordan. We roomed together, and he was just like, this kind of weird. He's like, not gonna lie, bro, I like really looked up to you. And I was laughing, and I remember telling him, I was like, I almost guarantee you, if you keep doing what you're doing, it'll be a reverse scenario. One day you'll be way bigger than me. And he reminded me of that recently, and I was like, yeah, I told you, kid. And I was like, he was just nasty and super easygoing. I was like, if you just stay that way, you will for sure like and stay. And he likes streaming. I was like, you're gonna blow up. I felt like I was like, what's the word? Like being a bad influence on him in like funny ways. Like we went to the hotel breakfast and they turned around because they said, oh, you didn't pay for breakfast. Like say a room number. And Mike starts turning around. I was like, yeah, room 219. And Mike's like, that's not our room number. Like, let's see if it works. Like, oh, okay, thank you. Take a seat. Like I was like, we just charge breakfast in someone else's room. Like that's how it's done. Like this is what you gotta learn to do.
So, question for you, because this is something that I talk about on stream a lot, and I actually really want your take on this. I often say that I still wish that CSGO felt as good as 1.6 did. Like, do you agree that 1.6 was the GOAT in terms of movement and shooting, or does it still feel like too outdated to you?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I get so into just like what I did. I think for a while, like what I missed most was the movement. I think like shooting in CSGO definitely felt easier. It got a little bit better, but like at first in CSGO, you remember like the op, like and the rifle penalty when you would counter strafe, like you can be pretty errant with it and still be accurate for his bullet.
It felt Source-like, yeah.
So they definitely made it better in Go, and I definitely think Go is in a pretty good spot with that. But yeah, the movement off like ladders and then like obviously like wall banging, like I wish I could have like done a stat track of like wall kills. I was like, I don't know if anyone was fucking close. Honestly, maybe even to my detriment sometimes. I'm just like not rotating, just fucking lining up wall kills.
Hold on, I got this guy. Hold on.
Yeah, hold on. And I would get it all the time, dude. And like I have some shots that aren't even in frag movies that would just fucking like break your mind. Like upper B on Dust 2, on LAN X3O semifinals. It's just like a 10K tourney, nothing big. And I remember some guy runs from upper B dark, right? They're running lower B, right? To go like Xbox up cat. And I fucking whip no scope the guy from B through the floor all the way to underpass, like after killing the guy who had the bomb upper B, and I just like whip no scope. I was like, that's never been in a frag movie, and no one even probably knows I did it except like the 30 people at that room.
Bro.
And it was fucking insane.
Speaking of movement and shooting, I am curious, you know, for better or for worse, CS2 definitely feels quite different, and people have had thoughts about this. I'm curious, a true OG CS player, you know, what is your take on the movement and shooting in CS?
I need to try a 128 tick, because so what's happening is like everyone famously knows, if you watch my YouTube or any of my content, that I just hate CSGO 64 tick as it is. I don't like it. Like I can kind of adapt, but I have to adapt. So even just hearing me say that, right, like it means something. I have to change the way I shoot and feel. I do feel like the registration, people says it feels good because part of me wants to tap more in that game because the visual recoil. So I want to play 128 tick and I want to play against better players. And I think that pressure test will help me verbalize what I'm feeling a little bit better, because I play these noobs. I could drop 40 every game I go into the CS2 matchmaking, you know, and it's like everyone's movement's kind of bad. I'm just tapping. So the registration feels pretty good, but then the visual recoil is worse, so spraying feels worse, but I'm not sure if it's actually worse. It almost felt like it was just like you're playing soccer and CSGO was like a normal weather playing in grass, and you start playing CS2 and it's like, this is the same game, but it's fucking raining and it's a little muddy out. So right now I'm not like stoked on it, but I'm not like counting out, and I remember how bad CSGO was when it came out.
Tick rate aside, because I agree that it's a factor, as is right now, do you think that CS2 feels, like, I don't want you to be reductive about it, but like, do you think it feels like shit, or do you think it feels good, it just needs work?
I wouldn't say good.
Okay. Okay.
It just feels all right. It just feels all right.
It
Yeah.
feels all right. It feels worse than Go for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, like a little bit more time playing some better players, and I'll see like when I bear down and really try to like get focused on the mechanics to feel how much is different. Then I'll know, do I feel like I'm in control? And now because now I'm not, muscle memory is not thinking of CSGO or Valorant or anything, you know, but more. That's kind of what I need to do to give you the best answer, but it does definitely feel worse.
So suffice it to say, NACS has been on hard times as of late, and everyone is very excited that CS2 could, reignite the NA scene. As someone who's been around forever in this scene, and who has actually obviously dabbled in Valorant and has played both games, what are your thoughts? Like, do you think that it's just hardcore copium, or do you think that CS2 could actually stand a chance against Val and maybe reignite this region?
I think one thing that's interesting in Val that they did that it kind of showed me is when your matchmaking system, them having a 128-tick matchmaking system with the leaderboard, and the way they brought in some kids from Apex and Fortnite and these other games, right?
Yeah.
There were some kids from just matchmake or whatever in Valorant that have found their way to challengers and top teams or whatever. And they played CS, but no one knew who they were, maybe because that's a whole other combo about maybe the old guard keeping them out or whatever. But that dynamic is one I'm hoping CS2 could change, because I do feel like if you really want to bring kids just straight from the fucking grassroots, alleyways of Brazil kind of thing or whatever, that kind of player that comes out of nowhere, they need to have somewhat of a path, right? Because unless you know how to network, a lot of these kids that might have the potential, the plant will never get watered. It'll just fucking die in the shade, so to speak, or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of good kids that I feel like Valorant's little just basic 128-tick, same servers as the pros play on. They have a clear matchmaker. These kids get a top 100. They get a little bit of recognition. They get on the buddy list of someone who's good because they're I keep seeing this kid ranked and he's owning. But no CS player in the history of ever has had that happen from matchmaking. For NA to kind of get back on the map specifically, and then even globally, we just need these next gen kids to be grinding and have a good opportunity to play with and against good players, because that's how you get better. People ask for lessons all the time. I teach people all the time. If I say you have good mentorship, whether it's direct and you know the person, or indirect and they're kicking your ass, you just need good mentorship. That's how you get better. And if these kids are limited to playing matchmaker or FPL casual, they're not going to get as good as they can as fast.
Jordan, that clip of you throwing the smoke top mid in CS2.
Oh my! But how long in Pascaluta?
Oh yeah, that's how you use it, Jordan. That's how you do it, baby.
Were you thinking this is gonna be a clip, or is this just another day in the office for you?
We're not playing the best opponents, and it's just another day in the office, because I'm just basically I'm just trying to abuse the new mechanics. I did it all over the place, but I'd get 1 or 2 kills. I knew they were passive outside long. We were kind of thrashing them, so I just got aggressive, and I was I know they'll be outside here. I want to get a couple kills. It's pretty much that simple.
Was it cool kind of seeing your clip make the rounds again, blow up so, because it was viral, right? It went viral super quickly.
I know, dude. I went to post it on TikTok, and Heroic literally beat me to it on their account.
Yeah.
I post mine, got some views, but next day Heroic has 6 million views on their TikTok of my clip. I was
no.
Nice. All right, exposure.
Last time we talked, which was a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago, I asked you, would you ever, consider, obviously you have this wealth of experience competing since you were a kid, would you ever consider coaching? And you said, actually, you wouldn't even be opposed to the idea of competing. You might actually flirt with the idea of competing.
Yeah.
Are you still sort of, you know what I mean, thinking maybe, obviously you have a second, you have a second child on the way, and I imagine that it's keeping you busy, but I mean, you're not, you're not that old, man, and I've seen the clips. You're still cracked. So what do you think?
It's funny because my wife said, she's maybe you should play. You should play again for a little bit. The kid, we're not gonna be traveling much after son's born. But I was first of all, I've been bouncing between games, and I was laughing. I was in Valorant, I had before the league started, I had some challengers type teams ask if I was interested in stuff, and and then in CS, I'm wow, CS is so refined to a couple teams. I'm they're not gonna have a stand, and EG's got 36 players, and Liquid's got the best team, and there's not as many options. So I would maybe consider ringing, but even now, now that I'm playing CS and I took the last year and a half, whatever that was, where I really wasn't playing much CS, I'm looking at nades and stuff and laughing. I'm having to watch my own YouTube series called Nade for Noob.
To reload all your
so I could definitely a lot of the intangibles I still have. So my confidence and composure and comms and and like things would get up to speed pretty quick. Coaching before playing probably seems more likely in the future, but I'm also not that interested in coaching, to be honest. Like,
Really?
I don't know. It's just such a grind that it would be a unique situation. I might be like when I was talking to Liquid before, and I knew all the problems they were having with personalities, and I was like, listen, this is the best team in our country, and all these kids are just like, well, I'm not gonna dump all their business, but they were just being little shitheads to each other, and I was like, that makes me want to coach because I just want to come in literally for like 3 months and metaphorically slap everybody and just be like, listen, what are we doing here? Like a liege, you should be just destroying everyone, but everyone's worried about this and that problem. NAF, you're chill, just keep doing what you're doing. You're sitting in the corner, like, everyone. And so that kind of thing motivates me sometimes, but it's a very specific reason because I know people and I feel like maybe I could pull the best out of them.
I was going to ask you as a send-off, I was going to say, how do you feel now? Like, I know that it's not out yet. Like, I know we're literally like in this, weird Dust 2 beta thing, whatever. But like, how do you feel sort of about like the future of Counter-Strike, like differently than we did a year or 2 or 3 years ago, right?
I'm stoked that they're trying to give back to the community constantly because CS is shown that it's such a continually growing game. Even though maybe the FPS and TAC FPS world is kind of expanding, there's new games, and it's getting like maybe sometimes people would say spread thin now, but there's still so many people interested in Counter-Strike and love watching it at a high level that I'm glad they're. Hopefully if CS2 isn't how it should be at launch, hopefully they continue to pave it like they did with CSGO.
You can catch the full unmuted interviews streamed live right here on theScore Esports YouTube channel. Summit playing CS is a vibe, man. It always happens.
Too, like with Summit, like just to even add to his history, like do you realize he worked at a LAN center that like I competed at when I was young?
No
like he was just like Southern California in terms of like talent, out of the top like 50 players in the country, at least half were going to these little room LAN tournaments. And growing up for multiple years, Jared and his ex-partner at the time, and like at different points, they ran these. They were the admins behind the tournament.